Three.
Hello. Another problem that is normally set in microeconomic questions is the effect on the market when supply changes and demand changes at the same time. So both supply and demand are changing simultaneously. Now, there's no way we can know the effect on the market without drawing the graphs. So, as always, draw your graphs to be able to determine what the effect is going to be on the market. I have to warn you, this is going to be a little bit complicated. This graph is going to be a little bit messy, but just bear with me, follow the steps one by one, and hopefully you understand what is going on with the graphs. Okay? So, I'm going to draw a slightly bigger version of my graph. Okay, slightly bigger version, and I'll start with my demand 1 and my supply 1. We have equilibrium 1, we have quantity 1. As always, we have quantity here, Q stands for quantity, we have price here. Okay. I'm being a little bit lazy putting these numbers here because they are very repetitive. Okay, so this is the starting point. Whenever you have the demand and supply meeting at a particular point, that becomes what we call the equilibrium point. Equilibrium just means equal. The demand and the supply are equal here. That is the market price. That is the starting point. So whenever you have a question like this, whatever form it takes, the starting point is always to draw demand and supply first and indicate what the equilibrium point is, indicate your quantity 1, and then go on to indicate your price 1. That is the starting point. You are okay to go. So let's start with supply. Okay, so when supply changes, and here I'm going to assume that supply is going to increase. Okay, supply, for whatever reason, the number of sellers in the market have increased, therefore supply increases. Remember the rule, an increase for supply is always to the right. So let's draw our S2. Supply has increased. The demand curve remains for now the same. It hasn't changed at all. So we have a new equilibrium. We call this E2. Quantity, of course, has increased to Q2. And see what happens to price. Price has decreased. We have P2 here, okay? But the question is, what's going to happen? Just ignore my mobile phone, okay? The question is, supply has changed here. We can see it. I don't want to do the opposite of increase in supply because that's going to make the graph too messy. But let's leave it like that. There's a change here. There's an outward move of supply. But let's assume at the same time, demand has decreased. That's going to be interesting. Demand has decreased. So the change for demand here is that it has decreased. And if it has decreased, then we have to draw a new demand curve that goes to the left part of D1. Okay? It's going to be somewhere here. So let's draw that. Remember, we have a new equilibrium here, but it's likely that we're going to have even a third equilibrium. Okay, so this is our D2 here. It's looking messy already. Be very, very careful. Some students often go looking for the third equilibrium here, but that should not be the case. You've already moved the supply curve once. So the new supply curve is here, and so your new demand curve is somewhere here. Therefore, it meets that here. And your E3 meets your supply curve 2, your demand curve 2 is somewhere here. Your quantity goes back to Q3. Why is that the case? Well, your supply curve is down here, and your demand curve is also somewhere here. So what happens to price? Well, price goes down to P3. Well, we know when demand goes down, price always goes down as well. When there are no people or less people to buy a particular product or service, the price is going to fall. So that's what is happening at E3 here. So E3 shows the effect of price drop, and E1 shows the effect of price increase. So that's the way to look at the effect on the market when supply changes and demand changes at the same time. We can do more detailed analysis of this, but for now, this is the summary of how the market looks like. I have to warn you also that these shifts that we have seen here also depend on the elasticity of either the supply curve or the demand curve. In some cases, the demand curve can become a little bit steeper, which means it's inelastic. In some cases, the supply curve can also become a little bit steeper, making it inelastic. So this is just for an example purposes. We cannot go into the details of whether the demand curve has an inelastic effect or elastic effect. Those will be reserved for another discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you.